Welcome, everybody, to the Dr. Leadership Lounge, where we have conversations with business leaders from all walks of life about how and why they are successful. Hey, everybody, welcome to another edition of the Dr. Leadership Podcast. Today on the Leadership Lounge, I am very, very, very fortunate to have a wonderful young lady I've gotten to know over the last couple weeks, Miss Kim Ades. She is founder and president of Frame of Mind Coaching, an author of What You Focus On Grows, and very soon to be published children's author. I want to welcome Kim to the show. Kim, welcome to the Dr. Leadership Podcast.
Thank you so much. I am so excited to be talking to you. I've been looking forward to this.
Well, that's awesome. I have too. You know, whenever you kind of get a call that someone is willing to come on the show, I was very excited. We had a good conversation the other day. And, the Leadership Lounge, which my guest episodes are on, is really all about just sharing good people with other people. You know, we both have good contact lists, and we both have people that we have similar relationships with or happen to know in passing. And it's just great to have you on to talk about other things that I don't necessarily always cover, and people are always glad to hear from somebody other than me too. So welcome to the show. You know, I always kind of start off here a little bit. First of all, what the Frame of Mind coaching is all about is really executive coaching and leadership and interaction, and it can be all sorts of life lessons. We're going to touch on that. But one of the questions I always kind of start with is, how did you get here? How did Frame of Mind coaching come about? What was the journey to today?
Yeah, great question. I have always been involved, engaged, a studier of leadership ever since I was young, really, and then throughout my education, my undergrad, my MBA, I was always interested in leadership. But I'm what you call a serial entrepreneur. So prior to this business, I used to own another company called Upward Motion. And we used to build simulation-based assessments to identify who are the leaders, who are the top performers, how do you distinguish between one person and another, and who really will survive in the long term when you look at performance.
That's awesome.
And what we discovered, and we were building simulations when simulations weren't even cool yet, they weren't even a thing. So you can imagine the technology we were using was really, really, really old school.
Rudimentary at best, yeah.
Yeah, rudimentary. Hey, at the time we were leading edge. But anyway, what we discovered was something really interesting, because we tested really hundreds and thousands of individuals to distinguish what makes the top performer, what makes someone kind of always swim to the top. Mm-hmm. And what we discovered was that a person who had a high degree of emotional resilience would be more likely to succeed than others. And now you're probably going to ask me, well, what exactly does that mean, Kim?
Mm-hmm.
And
stole my thunder.
What is emotional? Yeah, sorry. So what is emotional resilience? Emotional resilience is the ability to bounce back from adversity with speed and agility, and this is important, and leverage the adversity somehow. So something terrible happens to you, as everyone experiences a bad experience, right? Everyone has that.
Yep.
What do you do with it? So we fall, but then the question becomes, how quickly do you get up, and how quickly do you take what happened to you and turn it into a strategic advantage?
That's a great aspect you're talking about. You know, I touched on this, and I'm trying to remember the name of the episode now on my weekly, covered something on the fringes of this, not anywhere near the depth that you have gone in your career and life around this, but around resilience. And take the negative and turn it into a positive is kind of what I'm taking from you there. Is you stub your toe, don't just learn to move the coffee table but in life, but how do you use it to propel you to the next level in whatever your endeavor is you're on, right?
Right. And it could be design the most, the coolest shoes with toe protectors.
That's right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I totally get it.
It's not only turn it into a positive, but think about it from the perspective of an advantage.
Mm-hmm. A differentiator for yourself.
Yeah. So this thing happened to you. It informs you. It gives you perspective that you did not have before. How do you leverage that experience? And that's what I'm really talking about.
So the CEO of my organization, and it's not his term, but fail forward and fail fast, right? It's
Yes, yes.
just keep moving forward. And I think that's important for, this show's touching lots of different people, individual contributors, which may be leading in their families and in their relationships, needing advice and learning experiences. Maybe it's being a parent, whatever it might be that you lead in life. It's a good thing to build up as this characteristic of resiliency. And emotional intelligence, many times is far more important than IQ. EQ is more important than IQ as a leader, at least in my opinion, because you have to utilize your own emotions, and you have to figure out how to tap into and get the most out of other people through their emotional concepts and how they take things.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I'll go even further, and I'll say that it takes a very high level of EQ to be able to lead in such a way that you're actually coaching people in your organizations. And I believe that great leaders are great coaches.
I couldn't agree more. I've always, and I'm not saying I'm a great leader with this comment, but I've always called myself a coach. I made a decision in 1995. I was an individual contributor, and I decided I wanted to coach because I loved the feeling of that. I get as much juice out of the high five for someone else's success as my own. I like being successful. I like getting the recognition, etc. But the coaching was really, really what inspired me, because I just like seeing people get it. It's such a rewarding thing when that smile comes across their face and they go, it just resonated. We just hit home, and what a great concept.
I'll tell you a really funny story because it just happened today.
Oh, goodness. We're talking real time. We're talking real time here.
Yeah, real time. So I was just like, usually I coach people for a 10-week period.
Okay.
And then often they come back either immediately for more, or they take a bit of a break and they come back for more. In any case, I was wrapping up a 10-week coaching period with an executive I've been working with from the West Coast. And at the end, I kind of like to, kind of do a wrap up, retrospective. How did it go? What did you take away? What changed?
Sure.
And he gave me a huge list of all the things that changed. And towards the end, I'm like, well, tell me like a little bit of feedback on your relationship with your wife. And he said, my wife loves what Kim did for me. And I'm like, wow, that's a testimonial.
Dr. Ruth-esque there for you.
I'm like, can we please get that in writing? Like your wife.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah, that was a good one.
So you said you've always had this entrepreneurial spirit. Was there someone growing up? Do you think you took it from a parent or something around? What do you think triggered that entrepreneurial spirit growing up?
Yeah, my dad was an entrepreneur. He began a powder coatings business.
Very cool.
That grew to a sizable level. It's still around. It's still up and running. My brother runs it, and it's a large company now in head offices in Montreal.
Uh-huh.
And so, I think it's hereditary to some degree, but I never actually finished telling you what got me here, so I can go back.
Yeah, please do.
So serial entrepreneur. I was in the software business, and we were building assessments. I ended up selling that business.
Okay.
And I got recruited by a coaching company locally. And I lasted with that company for about 8.5 months, only 8.5 months. And
the longest 2 years of your life.
The longest 10 years of my life. And so the question is, why only 8.5 months? Reason number one is, I'm an entrepreneur. It's really hard for an entrepreneur to now go back and work for someone.
I bet.
It's like feeling like a caged animal. It just doesn't work. And then the second reason is that I got a chance to observe how they coach. Mm-hmm. And I thought to myself, I think they're doing it wrong. And I think I could do a better job.
That's awesome.
And so that's when I started my own coaching company, Frame of Mind Coaching. And that was 20 years ago. So that is the short story.
That is awesome. I think it's funny that you say that. So when I was an individual contributor, you look at your managers around you. And I think the first way I looked at coaching wasn't how I was going to do it, but maybe how I was not going to do it. You're
Right.
looking at how other people are impacting you, and did it resonate? That that statement or that approach didn't hit, whatever it might be. What I've always considered myself kind of a servant's attitude toward it. There's been some wonderful books written on it. Not claiming to the levels of those books have you aspire to be, but I think really caring for others. That's that coaching spirit, right? You're wanting. I've always said my job is to make the people around me and I'm responsible for better and to surpass me in capabilities. That's what my job is, to get them up and out of the nest, right, onto the next level. And I think it's so important. Funny story, and I told this years ago now on the show, and I'm going to change his name in case he ever does listen, but there was a gentleman, we'll call him Bill Bimini, and he said one time, "There's no I in team," and I said, "Yeah, but there's a couple in Bill Bimini," because he was a coach that was just so self-focused, that it was very hard for me to. His followership level was not to the level that I would aspire to have as a good coach, because it was so me
Interesting.
focused. Yeah. So you started frame of mind coaching, and then you kind of spun off. And I said, you want to spend more time on the new endeavor that's coming out, but you wrote a wonderful book. What you focus on grows. Do you want to just give a little shout out on that, or any context around that for a
I'll
moment?
tell. Yeah, the context is this: I was asked to speak at an event,
Uh huh.
and I was asked to speak like, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 months in advance. And I'm like, yeah, I'll speak. And then they said, do you have a book that we can put in our bookstore? I'm like, absolutely. And 2 weeks before the event, they reached out and they said, okay, well, can you please send us your book? And I said, oh, shit.
I
better
forgot to
a
write the book.
So I wrote the book.
That is
But
wonderful.
the book is a series of short stories of a variety of observations, experiences, and what we're really doing with that book is helping people look at the world through a different lens. Like the normal things that you see, let's look at them a little bit differently. And why? Because the way you look at things will impact how you experience everything. And so there are a whole bunch of snippets. You can open the book on any page,
That's
literally,
great.
and start there, read any short story. And it's super interesting because people relate to the stories. Some of them are funny, they're cute, you think you're going one way and then you take a sharp right turn. You're like, oh, I didn't expect
It's got
that
the
outcome.
Stephen King ending. That's great.
Not exactly Stephen King. I'm
But
not.
you know what I mean. It's got the twist at the end.
Yes.
That's right.
Yeah. But and obviously the book has been updated a few times since then.
Sure.
But yes, what you focus on grows, and the basic premise is where you put your attention, that will determine everything in your life, how well you do at work, how healthy your relationships are, where you spend your time, all of that, all of it.
Well, I buy into that a lot, just on the concept there. I can't remember who the author was, but it's either 1,000 minutes or 10,000 minutes. Whatever you focus 1,000 or 10,000 minutes to, you can become great at. And
I think it's 1,000.
It's
I think
1,000.
it's
That's right.
10,000 hours.
Hours. That's right. It is hours. Thank you. And
Yeah.
if you focus to something long enough, you're going to get great at it. There's very few savant moments in life where you sit down and suddenly you can play the piano, right? Anything
Yes.
you want to be, if you want to be a better husband, which I'm constantly trying to concentrate on in my relationship with my wife, it's important for us to do that. But I mentioned you were coming on, and I mentioned the book, and she goes, oh, I 100% buy into that. She's a leader as well. And so you've got a couple of people with conviction on what you're talking to there. We think that's just a great idea.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Now I want to talk to your wife.
That's right. She'd be great. I'll tell you, a handful, a very strong person, which is great. And a good leader. We have kind of a yin and yang, right? We're a bouncing board for each other, which sounds like I know your husband's involved in the business as well. And we were just talking about that a minute ago. You get an opportunity to have somebody to bounce something off of. It really always helps. So
It really, really does.
So
Yeah.
the services of the business are really all encompassing. You kind of touched on it a minute ago when you were explaining it, but you focus on, executive coaching, of course. You were just talking about relationships, parenting, leadership in general. What are you
Everything.
Yeah, all sorts of things. What are you finding are the most common issues you're helping people with today? Or not necessarily issues, but what type of clientele? Is there anything that's stronger now
Yeah.
than after? Especially,
So I'll
I thought about this, just sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but coming out of COVID, what kind of transitions happened there? Did it become more relationship
yeah.
based because everyone was locked up together? I
Good
just,
question.
yeah.
Good question. So we coach what I define as a highly driven population. And normally, they are leaders in organizations, but not always, right? Like sometimes you have a high potential leader, but it's the character of that driven individual is what we're really talking about. And
Yep.
what we've discovered over the past 20 years is they typically struggle in one of four areas. So the number one is a lot of these people are very isolated. So they carry a lot of responsibility. They feel like the burden of responsibility is on their shoulders alone. And they may be delegating, but at the end of the day, the buck stops here. And so they feel that burden and it weighs heavily on them. They feel like they're in it alone. And there's not a whole lot of people that they can express themselves to openly, honestly, freely, without second guessing whether or not this is going to affect them or impact them in some negative way. So they have they're always calculating.
It's a trust issue. Is that a trust issue, do you think?
There's a trust issue, but there's also just a vulnerability issue. How much of myself can I expose? Is it smart? How is this going to impact me in the long run? Where can I lay myself down, kind of thing.
Got it.
And so we see a lot of isolation. The second thing we see is, and you mentioned it, relationships. There's a lot of friction in relationships. And what we see is home relationships and work relationships. And there are two kinds of friction. One kind of friction is overt friction, and the other one is covert friction, or what I would call, a person who's silently holding it in. And so you may be upset with someone's behavior, performance, level of commitment, whatever it is, and you're not necessarily speaking that. You're thinking it, you're feeling it, and you're holding it in. And so we see a lot of that going on. Leaders who don't necessarily address those issues up front, and leaders who are seeing a lot of poor performance, people who aren't rowing in the same direction, people who don't have the same sense of urgency, and internally that just rubs them the wrong way.
Oh, just
so
bothers the heck out of them. Yeah.
Bothers the heck out of them. And they, that part of them says, I want to get rid of this person. Another person says, I don't have time, to deal with that. Another side of them says, how am I going to find a replacement? It's too costly. I don't have the energy for this, so that they carry on and focus on what they perceive to be more important. And that's on a professional side. On a personal side, we see a lot of friction in families. It could be, two siblings who are running the business together. It could be husband and wife, parents and children. Like, it's across the board, across the board. We also work with a lot of family-owned businesses, large businesses, but you have multi-generational families who are running these businesses. And so there are generational issues, there
succession
are
planning,
issues,
all
of that. So that's the second thing, it's the relationships. The third thing is what I call chronic dissatisfaction. And what we see is that leaders are never happy with where they're at. They always feel like they should be further ahead. Things should happen faster. They don't understand why things are taking so long, why things are so hard for them. And they're always like looking at their last success and saying, yeah, but that doesn't really count. That's not really important. I'm only as good as today. And so they have like a lingering, it's like hovering over them, a lingering feeling of self-doubt.
Fear of failure type deal.
Even if they're massively successful, they wonder, is it them? Like what's wrong with them? Why is this so hard? And why aren't things working as they should be? And then there's a fourth one, and I coined a term. It's called slippage. And what is slippage? It's when they let very important things slip through the cracks. Things like their sleep, their nutrition, their exercise, their friendships, their fun. Like, they're just, life. They're letting the good stuff in life they put it on the back burner, and they're not giving, the wellness side of their lives a whole lot of attention. And what we see is a lot of these leaders, a lot of these highly driven individuals are burnt out, they're tired, their bandwidth is really minimal. and they're impatient. They sometimes get mean, all of that.
It's what great topics here, guys. There's 4 shows here, I think.
Yeah.
Leaders, when people look at leaders, speaking from being on both sides of it, and I think you would agree with this, is they look up and they think, it'd be so easy, I could do that so much better. And they have no idea the inner turmoil that it
Yeah.
takes to lead not just big organizations, small organizations, a family business. I grew up in a family business too. My dad and his 2 brothers were in it. The grandfather had started, and then multi-generational. And I was a late child, so too many chiefs, not enough Indians. I bailed, right? I knew I didn't want to go into
Right.
that mix. You have a brother that's running a business that your father had started, which I'm sure there's some tie in there. But
Right.
you could go
Yeah.
through all these lists. You were talking about the relationship side and people hold stuff in. I've talked a lot of people don't like confrontation. They don't like to bring
Correct.
up something in the room. And I coined a term, this is 25 years ago. Maybe someone had done it before then, but I said we have to look at it as carefrontation, not confrontation. I
Mm.
care enough to bring it up. I care enough to point out your blind spot. I care enough to ask you what I'm doing wrong. I'm getting bad vibes, honey, if it's a spousal or a relationship interaction that you're feeling off on. And I think people need to lean into things, get comfortable being uncomfortable. As a leader, I think you got to press yourself past some of these barriers in your own mind. That one really resonated with me. The fear of failure we talked about, and you talked about slippage and health. I've worked remotely, and I want your feedback on this one. I've worked remotely for 14 years now. That was new for a lot of people, and I've gotten better as I've gone along. I think I'm more productive. I get more time in the day, etc. But a thing that people are really fighting today around that health and that slippage is not living the good parts of life. As it used to be, I work from home, and it can quickly become I live at work. If
Yeah.
you aren't careful, so I really try to only work in my office. I don't bring the laptop out into the kitchen area. I don't bring the laptop into the family room. Are you seeing that from a change since we've gone to this hybrid workflow or working and post-COVID? Have you seen more psychological impacts coming around
Yeah.
those?
Yeah, for sure. But I see 2 things, okay? And I see 2 opposite extremes. I see the person who doesn't stop working,
Yep.
right? They're watching TV, but they're working.
Mm-hmm.
They're having dinner, but they're on their phone. Like they just don't stop. They don't give it a rest. They don't give it a break. It's the weekend. They're still working.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to bed at night, and they're still checking their emails, and they're still responding, and they're still, right?
Yep.
So they're still mentally engaged and not really present. So we see that side of the equation. We also see the other side of the equation, which is disengagement, malaise, right? Like, yeah, okay, I'm at home. I'm supposed to be sitting at my desk, but like, fine, I'll just go show up at the meeting. After the meeting, I'm kind of like wandering about, not right, with this lack of focus, lack of clarity, lack of mission, lack of productivity. And so we see both extremes, right, in this kind of work from home situation.
And I think that's why the owners or the executives are saying, let's get back into not everyone's built to be driven remotely. I think it goes.
I don't think it's a location problem.
Really?
I think
You think it's just a
structural
personality
problem.
or structural? Okay, tell me about that.
No, I think it's a structural problem, because what happens, and I'm guilty of this too. But like, I have a team, and if I'm away from the team, if I'm like not kind of like, if let's say I work from Toronto, but this week I'm going to go work from Florida, and I want a little bit of space and time for myself. Guess what? I'm not so engaged with my team, right? And so then what happens? There's a structural difficulty, which is now the level of engagement, the level of contact, the level of communication slows down. It dips a little, and I think that's structural. Well, what that means is we need, in a work plan, we need targets. We need to be clear about what our joint goals are and what everybody's part is.
Yep.
Right. We need those OKRs. We need to be clear about, the sprint, if I don't know if you're familiar with sprints, but we need to be clear about what is the sprint for this week. What is the priority? What do we need to get done?
Mm-hmm.
What will move the needle this week? And what's everybody's part in that? So that there's clarity. And I think that's very much structural.
I agree
I
with
don't think
that.
it's location based.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's great. I suppose you have to have the right people, the maturity level, and those types of things to be able to remotely do it, of course. But I really am buying in on what you're saying there. That structure and goals, and you lose some of the teaming. I think that's the other thing that we've noticed in my organization. We shut down lots and lots of offices. We just figured we didn't need the real estate. We got through 3 years of this without it. Let's do it. And
Yeah.
collaboration begins to break down, and
Right.
relationships break down. Arguments or disagreements start to play out on email instead of someone picking up the phone, where you used to meet
Yeah.
at the coffee pot and go, "Hey man, I really didn't appreciate that on the phone call with every," you could
Yeah.
engage more, and I think it's easier to be excited as a team sport when you're together as a team. Those common
Yeah.
objectives
And
and those.
I think there's something to be said for meeting in person
Mm-hmm.
periodically.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that I think that a lot of leaders let their people just like kind of do what they're doing instead of having a very specific end game in short spurts.
Got it. Short-term goals, long-term aspirations type
Exactly.
approach to it. That's great. And
Exactly.
so I think in your mind, do you think there's a difference between a leader and a coach?
I think that great leaders are great coaches. That's what I think.
Mm-hmm.
Now, is every amazing coach must have leadership skills that they bring to their coaching. But that doesn't mean that they need to be leading a team of people.
Gotcha.
But every great leader must have really sharp coaching skills. So do you understand the distinction there? Every great leader must have very, very sharp coaching skills.
I totally agree. We had talked about it. What do you feel is the overall role of coaching? Why does a leader need to possess those coaching skills?
So, you said something earlier. You said the goal is to help them be better than I am.
Yep.
But that's not my intention or my goal, because what I do has nothing to do with what they do. And so, and my goal isn't, strangely enough, my goal as a coach isn't to improve their performance. That's a side effect. It's the gravy of coaching.
Mm-hmm.
My purpose as a coach is to understand their thinking and how their thinking impacts what they do and what they don't do, and how they do what they do, to understand the results they're getting, both personally and professionally. So, so my energy goes towards helping them shift their beliefs just a touch so that they are aligned with their goals. And when you see people struggling to reach their goals, our impetus, our urge is to help them change what they do. And yes, action matters, but thoughts, beliefs always precede action.
Sure.
And so the purpose of coaching is to understand how somebody is thinking and how their thinking influences or impacts the outcomes they're getting, and to help them line up their thinking with the outcomes they want.
It's funny. Not funny, I guess that's not a very good word. It's interesting. I've always said that you have to find there's been things on a person's why, great TED Talks and things like that on it. But what I used to go around and say, this is way back when I first started coaching, first started leading. What do you want to accomplish? Well, man, we'd really like to get a new boat, or we want to buy a house or whatever. Well, the next day they'd come into work and I'd have a picture out of a magazine of a nice starter house up in their office. And every time I'd do the management by walking around, right, MBWA, I would say, are you making progress toward that house? That if
Right.
where you're putting your energy, is that going towards what you really want to be? And if not, why not? What
Can
is
I?
going to be?
There you go. Can I respectfully give you some thoughts and feedback on
Please
that?
do.
Okay, so you went down a road and then you took a sharp right turn and then you ended up in the right spot. So let me back up. So there's a philosophy, right? Start with your why.
Mm-hmm.
And I will tell you that your why, my why, his why, her why, we all have the same why. The reason we want anything, whatever that thing is, more money, the boat, the house, the marriage, whatever it is, we believe that that thing will bring us more happiness,
Happiness.
joy, peace,
Right.
whatever,
Yep.
right? It'll help us achieve an emotional state that will be satisfying.
Dopamine.
That's the why,
Yep.
right? Everybody has the same why. And the real question is, what's the why not? What is your why not? What is getting in your way? And so when you said, why not? That's where I begin,
Gotcha.
right? Because what I'm really interested in is, what is stopping you from taking the action that you believe you need to take in order to reach your goals? And because the action isn't so important, it's the what's stopping you component. And what's stopping you is always, always tied back to a person's beliefs.
Not funny.
So I'll give you an example. Okay, I'll give you an example. Let's say a person is running an Olympic race and they're at the starting line and they look beside them and they see their competitors. And in their brain, they think, oh my God, they're amazing. I don't think I'm ever going to win. Well, that's it. The game's over,
Game's
right?
over.
They
Right.
don't even stand a chance. They don't even stand a chance. No matter how hard they try, they've
Lost the
disqualified
race.
themselves
Yep.
before the gun has even been shot, right?
Yep.
And so the way we think will impact what we do and how we do it and how effective we are. And it's the beliefs that interfere with our ability to reach our goals. The problem is, and here's where coaching comes in, most people have no clue what they believe because a lot of their beliefs are unconscious. They're hidden, they're underneath the surface. And my job as a coach is to bring them
Dig
to the
those
surface
out.
and say,
Yep.
okay, exactly, here are your beliefs and here are your goals. Do you see they don't really match?
Imagine
Right?
that. That's right.
Imagine that. So let's look at those beliefs and let's start to challenge them. Let's start to look at them and see if they actually make sense and where they came from and if they are true. Because we, as humans, we make things up.
All
We
the
invent
time.
things.
Abs. All
And
the
the
time.
reason we invent things, right, is because we believe that those things will protect us.
That's right.
Those beliefs will keep us safe. And they do for a while until they don't.
Sooner or later, it's going to catch up with you. Sooner or later. A great feedback. Great feedback. On the personal side of it, did you see back one other part of that question? I gave you a long question. There are a lot of commentary there. What has changed in your coaching and your engagement with the people you're doing business with now and in the past since COVID? Did you feel a big swing of any type? Was there any big change in what your business was engaging around or with people on?
I mean, to be honest, I think like when COVID hit, people were just struggling to stay afloat,
Mm-hmm.
both financially with their teams, trying to figure out like how do we mobilize not only the people but the space.
Yep.
How do we make this work? How do we still serve our audience? And their funding went elsewhere and sales went down across the board for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And so now they're like not spending money on things that they don't perceive to be super important. They're spending money on sanitizer and gloves, and masks.
Toilet paper.
Right? Right. Exactly. And so, priorities definitely changed early on in the game. But people were still struggling, and just the struggle kind of changed a little bit because, our view of normal was dramatically wiped away or
Mm-hmm.
pulled away from us when COVID hit. Like, could you imagine? Like, I never imagined in my lifetime
Oh, something like
a
that.
situation where every single person in the world would be affected by this, and the answer was stay at home.
Yeah.
Right? Like, it was like a mind shift that nobody was prepared for.
And that it was
And
just
so-
an unbelievable moment, wasn't it?
Unbelievable. And so, stage one was, in a way, batten down the hatches, make
Mhm.
sure we're safe.
Yep.
And over time, when it's not that things started to open up, when it became normalized to be at home and to do the things, get your vaccinations and do the things that you need to do, that's when people reached out again and said, okay, well, now I need to take care of my business. Now I need to take care of my emotional state. Now I need to get back to leading in this new normal.
Mhm.
And that's when people came back to coaching and reached out and said, okay, like I'm ready to do the work. All that other stuff, we get it. Okay, we have to wash our hands now, literally.
Yep. Yep.
right?
Yep.
So, but now, how do I keep my brain clean? How do I not go down a rabbit hole? How do I, stay inspiring as a leader? How
Right.
do I, do all the things I need to do?
I think that the emotional side of it is going to play out for years. You can see it in the political realm. You can see it in just interactions in families around the dinner table. Everything became hyper emotional. Emotional intelligence actually dropped in this world because of all this, because nobody knew who to believe, and everybody picked their teams, and suddenly a lot more fear in everybody's life. And things are coming out as we go along. Both sides were way wrong on a lot of different things. If there's a side, humanity should have been all interested in one, all for one and one for all. But I just wondered how that had impacted it, because how you coached before, the rules of the game have changed, right? You said they're not spending money on these things any longer, or they really, there's a lot of divestitures that happened. People got out of
Yeah.
businesses that were very low margin. People that were just nice to haves. They started focusing on growth opportunities. My business today is doing that still today, trying to reinvent itself, because we carried a lot of revenue and business coming through people having lots of people in offices and lots of real
Yeah.
estate and those types, and all that's changed. So it's just it is very interesting how all that that kind of came about and happened. And I just wondered, did it change how you approach people? Did you change your approach, or was it just that more people started having some of the emotional side challenges more than how to inspire?
No. No, 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 no. I didn't change the way I coach, because the way I coach is it's based in a solid methodology.
Gotcha.
So the approach to coaching stayed the same. Our approach to building or maintaining or, growing our business had to shift a little bit, right? Because people were like, I don't have time for coaching.
Right,
Like
right.
my mom is sick. She has COVID, right? So it was just a different landscape. So from a professional standpoint, we had to make some business shifts. We didn't make coaching shifts, because that is,
Process is solid, just
that
how you interacted or found the people that needed to engage changed.
exactly,
Gotcha, gotcha.
exactly. Our process has such a solid foundation and a solid methodology. Yeah, some of the issues changed that came to the table, right? Like,
That's what I was really asking too, is how did
right,
that
yeah,
transition? Yep.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, like my mother's in a nursing home and I can't see her, and things like that were happening. Those were new issues. Issues were new, but the methodology for coaching stayed the same.
That's awesome. What, you and I had spoken about your company when we first got together. One of the things, and I wanted to make sure I mentioned it while we're on here today, you offer complimentary coaching engagements. That kind of the first call, come in and let's talk about what we're about and what you're about. How do people
Yeah.
reach out and get in touch with your organization? What's the best way for them to start an engagement with Frame of
Yeah.
Mind Coaching?
So the best thing to do is to go to Frame of Mind Coaching, and on that site there is a contact us form, which
Okay.
enables them to schedule some time with me. Literally, it gives them a calendar link, etc. And what happens on that call? Before you get on that call, we ask you to fill out a form so that we understand, like, what's going on in your life right now. Where are you struggling, professionally or personally? And you get to share that with us. But what happens on that call? Like, if it's a 1 hour call, 55 minutes of that call is a coaching call, right? It's a call that's designed to understand what's going on, where you're struggling, how you're thinking about things, where your beliefs lie, the impact of that struggle. And it's a coaching call designed to create some movement for you immediately. The last 5 minutes is designed to say, hey, like, is coaching something you're interested in? Let me tell you a little bit about how we do things. And so it's an invitation, of course, to take a step further into coaching.
Sure.
But I cannot tell you how many times I received emails from people who have had just that one call and came back and said, I remember everything you said. That call had a massive impact on my
That's
life.
wonderful.
I made this decision and that decision. And it's because when someone can help you see things slightly differently, even just a little bit, that change can create a massive
Big
positive
waves.
impact.
Yep.
Big, huge waves. And so we think sometimes that we need transformation or renovation in order to get the transformation we're looking for, right? But we don't always need a massive renovation. Sometimes we need a tweak.
Man, it's so funny you bring this
And
up. So I just real quick, I want to hear you finish that up. But the episode that dropped today, the Dr. Leadership Weekly podcast, is about this constant transformation that people keep trying to do big wave changes, big wave changes. Our employees need a new psychological contract. They're psychologically out of it because they go, you keep telling me this is the change that needs to be made, and then we're going to go forward. And then another big one, they just don't feel any security or that leadership has it dialed together. It's a great Harvard Business Review article from about 3 weeks ago that I did the episode on, but it's just interesting that you say that. It's sometimes just little tweaks are enough, to drive improvement.
Yes, little tweaks. And I will say also this. There is a ripple effect because we coach typically, the presidents and the C-suite, the VPs. We coach the leadership
Sure.
of organizations, whether they're large or small. When the leader changes, there's a ripple effect that takes place throughout the organization, and the whole company changes.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very clear. It's very obvious.
Yep.
Like just today, I had a call with a leader of an organization. He said from now on, like historically, people brought him problems. They brought him problems. And who was he? He was the problem solver.
He took the monkeys off their back, I used to call it. Yeah.
Right.
Come in with solutions. So, yeah.
And and we discussed, like, what makes you good as a leader? I'm good at solving problems. And so what are you doing? I'm solving all the problems. So what does that mean? It means you're not equipping your team to solve problems.
Mm-hmm.
You're being the hero.
Mm-hmm.
Great. But that's not a good formula for growth.
And it's not
right.
sustainable. You can't be everything for everybody. That's right. That's right.
So one of the many realizations was now when someone comes to me with a problem, I'm sending them back to say, great, there's a problem. Come to me with solutions as well.
Yeah, this is so funny. Not fun. I keep saying funny for some reason. Just I'm remembering all these years, 30 years of leadership now. I had a manager that would always come in and just do the dump, This is all wrong, this is all wrong. And I was doing it. And I had a good leader that I reported to that said, why are you doing? And that was his methodology. Don't let them dump the monkeys on your back. You aren't a zookeeper, man. You gotta train them to get this done. So you just a slight change when you come in. Well, tell me what you think we ought to do. Just that statement to get them processing. And every time you ask it, and you might say, no, we're not going to do that. But at least they have to take the time and the effort to come up with a resolution or a potential resolution to solve it. And then you're creating agility in the field, agility downstream from you to handle customer issues, whatever it might be.
Exactly.
Yep. The company gets stronger.
The only person that changed in this scenario was the leader. Mm-hmm. But now what you see is a trickle-down effect of employees who are thinking better, right? Mm-hmm. They're thinking.
Or they hear somebody in the kitchen. I'm going to go talk to Kim this afternoon. Well, make sure you got an idea on how you think it ought to be fixed before you go talk to her, because that's what she's going to ask you. It starts to resonate. That's awesome. Awesome.
And when you have a team of people who are thinking, you get better solutions, and you become more strategic, and you have more people who are invested in the outcome, and now you have a vibrant team. Right, that little shift.
One little pebble in the pond.
Impact.
Yep, one little pebble in the pond. When we go ahead. Sorry.
And of course, that's just one little tiny thing we addressed, and there were multiple things.
Yep, that's so awesome. When we were talking earlier this week, and it was last week, I think now actually, when we were talking about preparation for this, you said, hey, I'll even, if you want to go into a little coaching on here with one of your problems, we could do a little bit of that. You had mentioned earlier something that was, you said delegation, and it was something I'm much better now. I simply have to, the size and scope of what I have to. But I really struggled with delegation when I was a young leader, and I even said it's a trust thing. I'm OCD. You mentioned all these things that leaders are, right? They have this drive. They they're controlling freaks. It's like looking in a mirror here when you were saying this. How do you coach people that are becoming new leaders to free up and to develop that trust and to develop delegation skills? What's your input on that?
You know what? I often think about, do you have children?
Yes, I do. 2 daughters.
Two daughters. So when when one of your daughters, doesn't matter, just one, was very little, and you brought in a babysitter, did you throw the baby across the room and said, "Here," and run away?
I
No,
wanted to,
right?
but no.
You wanted to, but you didn't do that, right? Like, it's not a football, right?
That's right.
What you did was you said, "Here's the baby," and you didn't let go until you were sure that your babysitter
Had a
had
hold of it.
your daughter,
Yep.
right, got a hold of it. And so that's what I refer to when we talk about delegation. Unfortunately, a lot of leaders just throw things at people and then run and say, "You see, they can't do anything."
What a
Right?
great thing. They haven't been empowered. They haven't been shown.
Well, yeah, and it's not really, like, the term empowerment is a funny term, but it's really about, it's a handoff. Delegation is a handoff, and leaders don't hand off well.
Got
And
it.
so that needs to be addressed a little bit more precisely. What would a good handoff be so that you feel safe letting go? That's really the question. What's the process? What's the procedure that you need to have in place so that you could walk away?
Clearly defined goal. This is what I want you to do with the ball. Here's the time frame I'd like you to do it within. And if you
Yeah,
have any
but
problems, reach back out.
yeah, but also let's review together. Let's make sure you got it right. Let's tweak it, And so I'll give you an example. 20 years I ran the company. For 15 of those 20 years, I wrote my own newsletters. But after a while, like, that's not effective or efficient anymore. You
Right.
got to get someone else to do it, right? And
Yep.
so I found this amazing writer. The issue is, like, he doesn't know my content. He doesn't know my material super well, right? So at the beginning, he would write a piece and we would review it together, like literally on a Zoom call. Let's walk through it together
Yep.
so that you can get the nuances of my content. Then he would write a piece and he would send it to me. And then I would just, like, highlight and explain why this needed to be
Couple
changed.
little adjustments.
And then
Yeah.
later on, yeah. But then, so, like, what am I doing? I'm letting go. At first, I'm not letting go at all.
A little
but
more
then
line, a little
eventually-
more line, a little more
Right.
line. Yep.
Exactly.
What a great concept.
So, right. So it's that kind of idea that, yes, you're going to delegate, and yes, it's going to take a little bit of your time to get someone up to speed and to train. But then guess what? It's hands off.
And then you have
Right?
that time back for the next endeavor that you need to focus on, the bigger rock.
Exactly.
The bigger rock. Right.
Exactly. So it's about, how do we approach this stuff? What are our beliefs? The problem is, a lot of leaders believe that somebody should be up to speed the minute they walk through the door.
We
Right?
used to, yeah, exactly. So I remember multiple stories. One of my first episodes was, why do you want to be a leader? And if it's about glory, that's not what you want to be. If it's about compensation, don't be an individual. Be an individual contributor. Go through it. And I tell a story when this is back in like the probably like 95 or 96, and there was a rep in Chicago that was just fantastic. And they just in 18 months moved him leading a team, and he failed miserably. It's because he wasn't shown and wasn't given the guidance, and it was just hand off and go. And then he wasn't made to be a leader. It just wasn't his realm.
Exactly.
At least he wasn't ready then. He may be the best leader
Yeah.
in the country now, and I just don't know what industry he's in or whoever's in.
Right.
But that's what came to my mind when you were telling that story is you have to, and that's why I said empower earlier. That's what I was thinking about. You got to at least give them some of the tools to be able to start. And you have to be
Right,
able to,
because-
yeah, otherwise they flounder, they fail, then they lose their confidence. Then you have a whole nother issue on your hands. Now you're coaching
Exactly.
on
We lose
something
our
that you were trying to
confidence, we
hand
lose our
off. That's right. What great feedback.
Yeah.
What great feedback.
Yeah.
Now, I said at the kickoff, and I want to give this time because we're just coming up about 10 minutes left, and you are writing a new children's book. And I think this is
Yeah.
really cool. Whimsical Kimsicle, right?
Whimsical Kimsicle, yeah.
Tell us
So
about it,
we
and
wrote-
what brought that on?
Okay, so first of all, I have 5 kids.
Yep.
And you know how your kids collect all kinds of stuff over the span of their lives,
Yes, I do.
and toys and games and all kinds of things. And over the years, I've kept the books that I read to them throughout their lives, like the good ones, the good books.
That's awesome.
And so in my basement, I have a wall of children's books. Even though I don't have grandchildren yet, We're not ready for that.
Working
But I
on it.
kept the books because I'm working on it, and I've always said I want to write a kids book, and I want to make that a project that I do with my husband. We're going to write a book, and so Whimsical Kimsicle is a story. It's actually, we've written 3 books, and I'll tell you very quickly what they're about. But Whimsical Kimsicle is a very energetic, bubbly, friendly, outgoing 10-year-old girl who clearly has ADHD, right? She's just like a little easily distracted. But, people love her, and she's very friendly, and she'll talk to anybody.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And she has curly hair like me.
Awesome.
Okay. So in the first book, her mother's not feeling well, and the mother asks her to run an errand for her. She gives her 2 envelopes. One envelope is designed to go in the mailbox. It's a birthday card for her uncle. And the other envelope needs to go to the neighbor's house a few streets over. And in the envelope is $100 because the mom owes this woman money for something she paid for.
Okay.
Whimsical Kimsicle is thrilled. She goes on her way, skipping down the street. And as she goes through the little neighborhood, she bumps into all kinds of people she knows.
The
she
adventure
gets distracted.
starts.
She plays. And the adventure starts. Eventually, she gets to the mailbox, and in her excitement, she puts the wrong letter in the mailbox. And so now the question becomes, how does she get the letter out of the mailbox? I won't.
Don't ruin the big ending. That's right. The Stephen King ending.
So how does she get it out? The Stephen King ending. So that's book number 1. Book number 2 is Whimsical Kimsicle's mother's birthday, and Whimsical Kimsicle wants to get her mother this amazing, wonderful gift, but she only has $1.64 to her name. And so now what happens? What does she do? How does she earn money? Like, what is her plan, right? So
how's she going to make it happen?
2.
Yep.
How is she going to make it happen? Book number 3 was inspired by a client of mine. The client's name is Kyle. And the story of Kyle is that as a kid, Kyle was a troublemaker. He was a bit of a bully. He made it hard for people around him. He had a lot of friction with others. And so my client Kyle said, what would it be like if Whimsical Kimsicle met young Kyle?
Wow.
What would it be like? Right. And so the story is this, that Whimsical Kimsicle always wears a pin in her hair in the shape of a fairy. And one day she goes to the park and she loses her pin, and she's looking all over the place for the pin and she can't find it. And she sees a family not so far away, and she's like, maybe they found it, but no, they're too far.
Mm-hmm.
And she sees a grandmother with a baby on her lap. No, she wouldn't take it. She talks to this man. The man says, if I find it, I'll make sure you get it back, but it's not him. And then she sees Kyle, and Kyle is holding her pin. And Kyle looks up at her and taunts her and says, looking for this? And so the question is, how does Whimsical Kimsicle get her
interact
favorite
with him? Yep.
pin back from troublemaker Kyle? That's the story.
That's awesome. Now, does your client get a byline on that 3rd book, since it was his idea? Original concept.
He will get a thank you at the beginning.
There you go. That's awesome.
Yes,
that's
sure.
awesome.
Yes.
Well, hey, it's just been, it's so interesting, as I said earlier, and I'd love to have you back again down the road and pick maybe some other topics to go a little deeper in on. But for all the listeners, so it's Kim Ades, and the company name again is Frame of Mind Coaching. You can find them easily. Go out and Google it. They have all sorts of different services that they offer. A great author. We have the original book, What You Focus On Grows, and now Whimsical Kimsicle coming out here with the trifecta, which I'm sure will be extraordinarily successful. Just great feedback today. Enjoy the time very much. If you were to give some parting comments today, just to those people out there that are, and remember the audience is very diverse. It's individual contributors, coaches, everything. Do you have anything that you wanted to make sure we at least covered a little bit today, or you got out there to the airwaves?
You know what? Can I give your audience an assignment? How's
Absolutely.
that? Okay. So grab a piece of paper and a pen if you're listening, and I'm going to give you 2 journaling questions to ponder. They have been really, really profound for many people who have worked through these questions. So question number 1 is, what do you really, really want more than anything? And I have 2 reallys there on purpose, because I want you to think about what you truly, deeply want, not what is expected of you, not what somebody else wants for you, not what you think you should want, but what do you truly deeply want? Write that down.
Okay.
That's journaling question number one.
I've written it down, and I wrote really twice.
Journaling, really, really. Question number two is, so what's stopping you from having what you really, really want right now? And write down all the reasons. And now look at the reasons and start to understand that underneath those reasons are a set of beliefs. And those beliefs are what is getting in the way. If you want help looking at this a little bit more closely, then send me your responses to these journals. And I personally will help you walk through it. We can set up a call. We can discuss it. I'm happy to do that. You can send it to me at kim@frameofmindcoaching.com. But the main message that I want to deliver is this. Anything you're struggling with is a function of your thinking and your beliefs. That's it, period.
I think
so when you're struggling and you think it's because of him or it's because of her or it's because of the economy or politics or the weather or whatever, no. It has nothing to do with any of that. It's an inside job. It's an internal problem we're having. And so stop and think that through.
Yeah, it's just what you accept. Right, what you're allowing yourself to do or not do.
Yeah,
you're only holding yourself back. It's up to us, right? It's up to us.
It's up to us. And so what we believe will determine what we achieve.
That is so awesome. I think that's a great moniker to end on. Kim, it's been such a pleasure, and I think the conversation was outstanding. Your insights are incredible. I will certainly be reaching back out. Everybody, again, Kim Ades, Frame of Mind Coaching. Does business all over the world, of course, does some great coaching for executives, relationships. Please reach out. And remember, everything she talked about today and all the things we talk on the Dr. Leadership podcast is about getting yourself in the right frame of mind, as Kim said, and then you can be awesome. And then you can keep that shit up. Talk next week.